Health, Psychology, and Human Nature with André Sturesson. Hello, friends. Do you know what would be one of the best things that could happen in the entire world? That would be if you would follow me on Instagram or Facebook. That would make angels sing, lonely kittens find a new home, and dinosaurs to come back. So please follow me on Health, Psychology, and Human Nature on Instagram or Facebook. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Health, Psychology, and Human Nature with André Sturesson. A science-focused podcast where we explore, learn, and improve our lives together. And today, me and Dr. Adrian Lopresti have a very interesting conversation about personalized integrative therapy, which is a holistic, individualized approach to mental health. It includes lifestyle, diet and nutrition, psychology, relationships, and more. And we'll get into all of these in today's episode. Dr. Adrian Lopresti is a clinical psychologist in a private practice. He's a senior researcher at Murdoch University, Western Australia, and a managing director of Clinical Research Australia. Without further ado, please enjoy. So, Adrian, welcome to the show. I'm so really happy to have you here.
No, thanks for having me.
We had some problems with our sound, but now it seems to work.
Terrific. We've worked around the internet. We're internet experts now.
We are, both of us. We didn't know it, but now we know. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you. You have created something called PI therapy, which is something that you developed where you use a pretty broad approach to treat depression and anxiety. Is that correct?
Yeah, so PI therapy is personalised integrative therapy, and PI therapy for short is an approach to treating depression and anxiety where I look at using a range of different strategies and targeting a range of different areas to help people improve their overall mood and mental health.
Right. What is included in PI therapy?
There's several areas that we target when it comes to PI therapy. So obviously there's the standard psychological treatments, helping people improve their mood, change their thoughts and things like that, belief systems. So there's the psychology and coping skills part of it. But also in addition to that, we also look at targeting diet and nutrition and make sure there's no nutritional deficiencies and make sure there's your levels of kind of important nutrients are there. We target lifestyle environmental factors, things like exercise and sleep and stress and even things like environmental toxins and things like that. We also look at the importance of social connections and life meaning and purpose, or kind of spiritual health that I talk about. And then in addition to that, we also target try to identify any medical or physical factors or physical reasons why they might be affecting people's mood might be affected, like things like sex hormone imbalances or thyroid hormone imbalances and things like that we know can affect the mood too. So it touches on a combination of all those different things to help improve people's mental well-being.
And it's also, as I understand, personalized. So when somebody comes to you, you also look at what the main contributors to their depression or to their anxiety is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really important part of PI therapy is trying to identify a person's unique causes or factors that might be contributing to their low mood or their anxiety. So no two people are the same. So really what we want to do is try to work out what's going on for this particular person and what causes might be going on that might be contributing to the person sitting in front of me in terms of their mood, and then we target that. So for some people it might be that their diet might be a factor that I believe might be affecting their mood, so we target the diet. For another person, their diet is fine, so we don't necessarily treat that. Another example would be, for example, sleep. We know that sleep is extremely important, but for somebody that comes in with depression, their sleep might be good, and then another person, their sleep might be a big problem. So we then treat the sleep problem. So it is very much individualized or personalized in terms of the treatments.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot of different factors or a lot of different things that can contribute to depression, for example. Do you think that it's the same things that contribute to? Because I'm also very interested in the well-being and if you're not depressed. So do you think it's the same things that contribute is it the same things that you focus on if you want to increase your well-being as to treat depression?
Absolutely. I think, it's still the same that we target. The symptoms may not be as severe for somebody so that they don't meet the diagnosis for a depression, but certainly the factors are still the same. If your sleep is a problem, if your diet is a problem, if you're not exercising, if there's a lot of stress in your life, that's going to affect your mental well-being. And if you can make changes or improve those particular areas, then your overall mental well-being and your physical well-being will improve.
Right. I believe that it's that us humans, we're designed to, for example, sleep 8 hours, or it can depend, of course, and to be physically active and a lot of other things to be social. And do you think that this way of living now contributes to these diagnoses such as depression and anxiety?
Definitely. I think our lifestyles unfortunately are contributing to a worsening kind of physical and mental health, and things like our sleep, our increased technology use at night, which can affect our sleep patterns, increased abundance of fast foods and takeaway foods and things like that will also affect our mental well-being. So unfortunately, there's a lot of environmental factors going on that are having a negative effect on our mental well-being.
I think that's very interesting. But do you think that this is kind of the main reason, or do you think it's other reasons?
Well, I think partly when it comes to mental health and depression and anxiety, there's probably better awareness and diagnosis that's going on. But I think it's more than that. Our lifestyles have dramatically changed over the last few decades, and not necessarily for the better. So we're becoming far more inactive. We're far more sedentary. Our diet has dramatically changed, and as I said earlier, and even things like the technology use, which is again something very, very new. We're being exposed to light, a significant amount of light at night time, which can affect our circadian rhythm, which is our hormones that often change throughout the day, and that can affect our circadian rhythm and then affect our mental health, our sleep, and our general hormone levels.
That's kind of that's what I believe as well. Like if almost everybody would take care of these things, not perfectly, but like if people would sleep and eat and be physically active and be with friends and not have huge amounts of stress, then probably you would see a pretty big difference in how many people who has these kind of diagnoses.
Yeah, you would see a dramatic drop, I suspect, if that was happening. The problem is that there's so many temptations out there. It's very difficult for many people to eat healthy, and it's far easier for a lot of people to drive in a car rather than walk. So people need to make it a very much a priority in their life, and if they don't, then it's far easier to go down the unhealthy pathway.
And there's a lot of changes.
Well, you can certainly see it when it comes to, obviously depression and anxiety is not something that you can necessarily see. But if you look at rates of obesity, which is something that we can see, and that's definitely a reflection of our changes in our lifestyle, and you see that it's epidemic around most developed countries.
How does being obese affect mental health?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a couple of potential ways that it can do that. Firstly, just being overweight can affect your own kind of self-esteem and your self-confidence. So there's the psychological component there, and often sometimes people who are obese can be treated differently by others. So that might contribute to its impact on mental health, but also obesity is also having excess fat cells is also very, very inflammatory, And excess inflammation can certainly impact on mood and impact on neurotransmitters. So there's a psychological component. So there's a social component that might be affecting our mood when it comes to obesity, and there's also biological factors that are going on too.
Right, and of course also with the mind-body connection, that your physical body also affects your mind, and the mind also affects your body. I mean, there must be an interaction there as well.
Yeah, sometimes we forget that. We sometimes think that the brain's not connected, and so when somebody's got depression, they go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and their obesity, they go see somebody else, and they kind of treat it separately. But we know that every body part affects every other body part, and we need to look at the whole person. And that's what the integrative PI therapy is all about. Is we know that all those systems can affect our body and our mind, and so we really need to target those.
Your approach is really taking a holistic approach, and as we just discussed, all of these things, they affect each other, and if you work on many different fronts, then you probably will end up with a positive spiral.
Yeah. I think the problem we've got is that if we put all our eggs in one basket, so if we just try to work on our mind, or our thoughts, or our belief systems, I think that's really important. As a psychologist, I believe that's very, very important. But if you're working on your thoughts and you're working with a therapist and trying to change your belief systems, that's great. But if you're not exercising, if you're not sleeping well, if you have lack of social connections, if you're eating a poor diet, if your body is inflamed, then you're not going to get the biggest effect by just targeting the psychology. You really need to look at all those other factors that are going on that could be affecting your mental health.
Right. There's also a very interesting thing that you wrote on your webpage, which is that by taking a little step in many different areas, so perhaps walking, changing your diet a bit, perhaps doing something about your sleep, perhaps doing something about your thoughts, by working on like a lot of different areas, but just a little, that can lead to quite a big effect overall.
Yeah, I mean, if you, it's very, very difficult to make a dramatic change in one area. So, but if you look at it in parts, and if you go, okay, if I can improve my diet by 10%, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if I can improve my diet by 10%, if I can increase my physical activity by 10%, if I can learn relaxation, and that helps reduce my stress response by 10%. If I can increase my engagement in pleasurable activities and things that I find fun, and you put, none of them are dramatic changes, but if you just make 10 small changes in all those different areas, they all add up. It's 10% improvement here and a 10% improvement there and another 10% improvement there. Ultimately, you put them all together and you have a dramatic change in mental and physical health.
So you think that it's better to make small steps in many areas compared to making a lot of effort in one area?
I think that's easier for a lot of people to do that. I think we've got to be careful, because when somebody is depressed, it is very difficult for them to make dramatic changes. And so if I had somebody with depression and I said, look, you need to eat organic and plant-based diets and no junk food, and they might become quite overwhelmed by that. But if I said, look, let's just increase your water consumption, let's eat a bit more fruit and veggies, let's improve your sleep hygiene a little bit better so you can get an extra hour of sleep a night, that might be far easier for people to do rather than put all their effort and energy in just one particular area. Yeah,
that's very true. I'm also very interested to hear about one thing, that since you have been looking at so many different things which affects depression and anxiety, what do you think is like the most important part, for example, with depression? Which activities or which things do you think is the most important ones?
I suppose, that's where the personalised becomes important. So it's really about identifying your unique causes. But ultimately, I think the main thing is if someone is experiencing a life full of significant stress, whether it be financial stress or relationship stress, then it's going to be very difficult for their mental health to improve. So if we can look at ways to either reduce stress or help learn ways to kind of manage stress a little bit better, then that's going to be a really important part of anybody's change.
Right. So of all the different things that you can work on, sleep, exercise, food, supplements, psychological interventions and stuff, of course you use psychological interventions for stress, but of like all the different things, do you think that stress is the most important thing for mental health?
Yeah, I say in general that would probably, in terms of the clients that I would see, that I think stress would be a major factor, and learning ways to manage that stress is going to be really, really important. And that could be by one way to reduce stress is to improve your sleep patterns.
Right.
Another way to reduce stress is to exercise. So it might be that you still use those other areas to help manage the stress. So even I think one of the most effective ways to improve somebody's mood is to do things that they enjoy doing. So thinking of different activities and pleasant activities that they can do and spending time with others, and that will then help reduce stress. So while stress is a big key, you can still use exercise and sleep and all those different areas to help reduce the impact the stress has on your body.
I understand. Do you think it's the same things that contribute to well-being that also is good for depression and anxiety?
Yeah, I think that it's all connected. And I think if we can do those things to help, diet and exercise and sleep and all those things, if we can get them to a level that's right for us, then our mental health and our mental well-being is going to be far greater improved. And we all know the effects of not sleeping, having a poor night's sleep, that the effect that can have on our mood and ability to concentrate. So really then, while I often talk about depression and anxiety, and a lot of my research is in that area, that doesn't mean that this doesn't apply to help improve mental well-being. I think it very, very much applies for that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I kind of look at it as a scale. Like if you have a lot of different things, like if you have a lot of stress, you don't sleep, you don't eat well, you're not physically active, that will of course contribute to you being depressed. But on the other hand, if you're already healthy and like if you improve these things, then you will become it's the same things that will contribute to you becoming even healthier.
Definitely, I agree. I agree with you 100% that it is, and you don't have to be depressed or anxious to make those changes or benefit from those changes. So if anybody's looking at trying to improve their overall well-being, then the components of PI therapy certainly apply.
Yeah, would you say that there's just in general? Would you say that there's different things that contribute more to depression than to anxiety and vice versa?
Look, I think whether somebody develops, in terms of PI therapy, I'm not so much interested in the label, in the diagnosis. So I'm more interested in identifying the causes. So for me, I might have 5 people coming in with depression, and they all might have the same diagnosis. But the treatment could be very different because I'm trying to identify their personalised causes that are going on. And so whether somebody suffers from anxiety or depression doesn't really make a difference in terms of how I treat them. I'm still trying to identify what is it that's going on that might be causing your anxiety or your low mood. And if it's sleep, then I'll target sleep. It doesn't matter whether you have depression or whether you're anxiety, I'm going to target that. I think how the symptoms play out, maybe genetics plays a part in terms of whether somebody develops more a depressive disorder as opposed to an anxiety disorder. There's different kind of genes and other neurotransmitters that might be impacted that might play a part there. But still, the causes are the key. Identify the causes, make several small changes to treat those causes, and hopefully mental health will be improved.
Right. I don't know that much about food and diet and how that affects our well-being. Like how big would you say that the effect from food is on mental health?
Well, the research seems to show that it has a significant effect can have a significant effect on people's mental health. So, see, food provides us with obviously nutrients and vitamins and minerals and amino acids and fatty acids and things like that. And all those nutrients are really important for our brain function, for all our organs, obviously, but also for our brain. And things like serotonin, so people don't know, often there's neurotransmitters that are believed to affect mood, and serotonin is one of those that are implicated with low mood. And the way that we produce serotonin is often through food, through nutrients. So you must eat protein to produce serotonin. You must have B vitamins. You must have magnesium. You must have zinc. To help to manufacture serotonin. So if you're not eating the right nutrients, then your production of serotonin is going to be reduced. And then on the other side of things, if you're eating an unhealthy diet and you're creating excess inflammation in your body, then you're breaking down serotonin, and therefore mood can be affected, because eating an unhealthy diet is very, very pro-inflammatory. And in the end, that can affect our mental and physical health.
Right. So would you say that that serotonin is one of the key factors to how diet affects mental health?
Oh, I think maybe the diet is more around, and it probably does in terms of serotonin, but I think the diet is more around. If you can eat a good diet, it reduces inflammation. And then inflammation is the thing that can affect. See, inflammation can not only affect serotonin, inflammation will also affect levels of cortisol, which is our stress hormone. Inflammation will also affect our levels of sex hormones and our thyroid hormones. So if you can eat an anti-inflammatory diet, which is a lot of plant-based foods, omega-3 fatty acids, things like that, are very anti-inflammatory, and lots of herbs and spices and things like curcumin and saffron, they're all very anti-inflammatory, and they've also been shown to have, and I've done plenty of several studies now looking at curcumin and saffron as an antidepressant. They also have been found to affect mood. We don't know exactly how they work, but it's probably a major factor is via their anti-inflammatory effects.
Ah, cool. What would you say, like the broad guidelines of a diet? You mentioned it before, but what would you say, like a broad diet for mental health and well-being? What would that include?
Well, I think initially it's really just trying to get the basics right. So drinking enough water, preferably filtered water, making sure you limit your alcohol consumption, but even eating lots of vegetables and plant-based foods, fruits. Try to incorporate herbs and spices in your diet. They're probably the key, and limit the amount of obviously takeaway food and processed food. So if it comes in a box, it's probably not natural. So therefore, we want to look at that. And then once you get those basics right, then you can add to it as you go along. Just get those basics right first, and then if you want to go. I know a lot of people go vegan and gluten-free and dairy-free and organic, but that might be too difficult for somebody if their diet is already very poor. So just start getting those basics right first, and then from there you can then add to things thereafter. And you can also look at supplementing for some people too. That can be beneficial if they find it difficult to eat a good diet.
Right. It's pretty hard to grow packages when you're a farmer.
Yes, yes, it is very difficult.
Yeah, but okay, so the first step basically is just to, if you're eating a lot of junk food, try to limit that or stop if you can, and then it's not eating things from packages. So starting eating food that doesn't contain a lot of different ingredients. Basically, trying to eat more natural components and cook your own food, basically.
Yep, which can be difficult for many people, but as I said, it's just start there, look at what changes you can make in terms of your diet. How do you improve it just 10% this week? What small changes can you make this week to help improve your diet? And And then from there, you can add to it as you go along. If you get 5% better every week for the next 10 weeks, there's going to be a pretty dramatic change over a 10-week period.
For sure. But let's say that you're already, if you want to take it one step further, so let's say that you're already eating okay. You're not eating a lot of junk food. You're eating, you're cooking your food. What would you say would be the next step if you would like to become or eat even better?
Well, what I would do then is, if you're already eating a pretty good diet, then I would look at, well, what other things might be affecting, should I work on next? It may not be diet. It may be that you work on your sleep, or it may be that you work on your exercise or your social connections. So if you've got it pretty good first, the diet, then look at what other areas you might need to really work on, or maybe more important next, and then you target those. Then once you've got everything else pretty good, then you can come back to the diet and improve it even further. But if you're expending all your energy working on your diet, and your sleep is extremely poor, then you're not going to get much significant change. So I'd say look at those areas that you need to work on first. Which areas are the most concerning first? Make those changes. Once they're pretty good, then look at anything else, and then. If then you think, oh, everything's pretty good now, then you can kind of improve your diet even further by incorporating more plant-based foods and nuts and seeds. And even, for me, I have a nice smoothie in the morning, which is packed with nutrients and blueberries and proteins and nuts and seeds and things like that I start my day off with.
Right. So what do you include in your? You see, what? Yeah. How does the Adrian smoothie look like?
The Adrian smoothie. So yeah. The Adrian smoothie this morning had raspberries and blueberries and some oats and a scoop of protein powder and walnuts and almonds and then I put a little bit of inulin powder in there to give a bit of a prebiotic effect. So that's what my smoothie looked like this morning.
Do you make one smoothie each day, or is it more of a one per week?
No, generally, that's my breakfast. That's
right.
Generally my breakfast. Yeah, so I'll have that every morning, and so that's a highly nutritious, full of packed with nutrients. That's my multivitamin, I suppose, and then also good. And I know it's really important for us to have protein, so I'm having my protein in there too. So. That's how I generally start my day.
Yeah, when we're doing our sound check before, I also asked you if you were fasting, but then you said you were fasting yesterday. Yeah,
sometimes maybe once or twice a day I'll fast. There's some research indicating that fasting can be beneficial. Not a lot of research from a mental health perspective yet, but I do it just for general health, and sometimes because I've eaten too much over the weekend. So I'll need to kind of detox a little bit. But I don't generally recommend fasting to my patients. Let's get the basics right first, and then you can look at all those different variations later on.
Right. I think I think fasting is one of those things that I've heard quite a lot of people mention now. It's getting quite popular.
Yeah, but again, you can work on your fasting, but if your stress levels are a major issue, maybe it's not fasting you need to be working on, but it's your stress, or it's your social relationships, or it's your marriage you need to work on, or whatever it is that's going on.
You also talked about supplements. This is also quite a general question, but if you would choose a couple of supplements which you think is good for pretty much everyone, which would be your favorite supplements to give us an advice?
Well, I think there's a good body of research around your fish oils. So I think having fish oils, a good quality fish oil, is probably one I would recommend. I generally recommend to a lot of my clients who are experiencing significant stress things like a B complex, B vitamin. Magnesium can also be very good during times of stress and may help sleep. So those are the things that I often recommend. And then if they do have low mood or there's some inflammation going on, I often will recommend either saffron, which I've done a lot of research on, and or curcumin. And they again can help reduce inflammation. And both of those ingredients have been shown to help reduce depression and improve mood. So I've done a few studies now looking at those two ingredients. The thing with saffron is very important to choose a high quality saffron because it can be an issue. So my research that I've done is on a patented form of saffron called Affron that I've used. So it's very important that if you do choose to use supplements, that it's very much need to be high quality ingredients.
Yeah, that's also one of the really, really, really hard things about taking supplements. I've bought curcumin, for example. And what I've done is basically I've gone to the German Amazon.de because they have a lot more reviews of the products. But what I go through is basically just looking at, okay, which product has the most reviews, positive reviews, and things that I want the product to have. And that is how I have bought my supplements. But I'm not sure if that's correct or if that's the right way. Like how do you know in an efficient way which products to buy, which supplements to buy?
Yeah, it is very difficult. I think certainly that's a good idea is to look at the reviews. The other thing I think is really important is if you're using it for a particular treatment or symptom or condition, then really find out whether that particular, say, curcumin or saffron has actually been investigated in studies. So so often we'll look at it and go, okay, what's the curcumin? Is it a patented form of curcumin? Has that curcumin, and let's say I was going to use it for depression, has that particular curcumin extract been used in depression studies? Has that particular saffron extract been used in studies? And ideally choose those ones where that have been evaluated in clinical trials. And it's often difficult to kind of work out which ones have or haven't, but if you can, I think it's really important to choose ones that have been clinically studied.
Yeah, that would be the best way. How can you figure out if a supplement has been how can you find out if it's been studied or not in research?
Oh, look, if you looked at an ingredient, and let's say, for example, it had saffron in there, and you looked on it and it said it was called Affron, for example. Let's say the one that I used, then I would then type on Google search and go Affron depression. Let's say I was using it for depression, and then see if any studies come up. If it was curcumin, one of the curcumin extracts I've used is BCM 95. So I would type in BCM 95, depression. Has it been used? BCM 95, arthritis. Has there been any studies on that?
Right.
And that would be a quick way to just see whether anything's come up. You might not be able to find anything. And if that's the case, that's fine. Then looking at the reviews, making sure it's a reputable company that's selling the products. Find out a bit about the company, because that's really important too. Right.
Is there any way? Now I forgot what I was supposed to say. Yeah, but what I also was wondering about, because this is an international podcast, do you know if there's any international big brands which you could recommend or?
It's always difficult to find one. I know in Australia we have quite strict conditions in terms of the manufacturing in Australia, so I feel a lot more confident using Australian products. There's lots of great American-based companies too. Things like Thorne is a nice company. There's a whole range out there, and I think one of the other things that you could do is even email the company if you want to use a particular supplement for joints, for example. Then email the company and say, look, has this product been researched, and can you send me some of the links to the research?
Right. Yeah, that really seems to be the best way to really figure out if it's actually being used.
Yeah.
And also if a company actually does studies of their supplements, then that's also a very good indicator that they're a company that actually wants their products to work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's, and if you look on Amazon or even the other ones, iherb.com is often one that often people will buy in Australia, buy supplements from, and things like Metagenics. So it's another good company. So there's a whole bunch of really good companies out there. Pure Encapsulations.
Yeah.
There's a whole range of really good companies.
Right. So the supplements that you talk about, that just from the top of your mind, it's curcumin, it's saffron, it's magnesium, a B complex. So that's B6, B9, B12, right?
Yep. Yeah. So B6, B3, B6, B9, B12. They're good to use. And the other one I haven't mentioned, which is really interesting, is, and I haven't talked about this much today, is around the gut-brain connection too.
Right,
so we've also, and there's lots of more and more research looking at even probiotics and that an impact they have on mood, and the gut-brain connection is a really exciting area of research, and potentially by improving gut health, you can improve mental health, because a lot of the hormones and our bacteria produce different hormones and short-chain fatty acids and things like that, which are really, really important for our brain function.
Yeah, that is such a interesting topic, which is also exploding now. It seems like everybody is also talking about it. I also saw that you written about, I think it was a meta-analysis about pre and probiotics and depression, right? I think you did a post about that.
Yeah, certainly did a post about that, about pre and probiotics. There's accumulating research showing more so probiotics for depression. We're still not quite sure which probiotics yet are the best, but there's some nice research there. I've also done talks and written blogs on things like the vagus nerve,
right?
And how our vagus nerve and how sometimes and how our bacteria can affect our vagus nerve. And for people who don't know, our vagus nerve is connected to all our different organs and our brain. And if you can turn on or increase the activity of your vagus nerve, then potentially that can help turn on your kind of relaxation response. And so things like slow breathing and probiotics and magnesium and a whole bunch of different things can help turn on that vagus nerve.
Yeah, that's what I've understood about the vagus nerve as well. It's important for relaxation and for that response in the body.
Yeah. So certainly, it's important for relaxation, and it's important, and relaxation is also a way to turn it on. So if you engage in slow diaphragmatic breathing, that can help increase vagal activity. And so things like that are really important. So there's certain herbs and spices that seem to kind of turn on vagus nerve. It seems like and the other thing is our gut health. So we can improve our gut health. That can definitely affect vagus nerve activity. And the research showing for example, probiotics, if you give probiotics in animal studies, if you give probiotics to a rat, it has anti-anxiety effects. But if you sever the vagus nerve, the probiotic no longer works. So it seems to kind of be working on that vagus tone.
So it seems like the bacteria affects the vagus nerve, and that seems to be a critical part of the mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be a really important part of the gut-brain connection, or bi-directional connection. So the brain affects the gut, and the gut affects the brain.
And there's also a lot of, as you mentioned, as I understood, a lot of different neurotransmitters also created in the gut.
Yeah, I mean, for example, most of our serotonin is produced in the gut. Now, however, even though the serotonin produced in the gut, it actually doesn't get into the brain. So it's not the serotonin that's produced in the gut that then increases serotonin in the brain. It's probably via other mechanisms. that it affects our brain. So they are separate, but certainly the gut can definitely affect our neurotransmitters.
Right. Okay. So it creates neurotransmitters like serotonin, but they don't enter through the gateway, the blood-brain barrier. They're just out there in like working on the body instead.
Yeah. So, for example, the way that it probably works in terms of increasing serotonin is that the bacteria in the gut will help increase an amino acid or tryptophan availability.
Right.
And tryptophan is an amino acid that is the precursor to serotonin. So by improving gut health, you potentially increase levels of tryptophan, and then the tryptophan then gets into the brain, and then via that effect, it increases
I get
serotonin.
it. Okay, so the precursor of the. Okay, I get it. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, it really seems to be one of the important and unexplored areas, the gut-brain axis and how the gut affects everything, kind of.
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot more over the next 10 years in terms of the effect of the gut on other conditions too. So we're not just talking about mental health, but we're seeing potentially the gut having an impact on neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
We're also seeing potentially an impact on things like arthritis and things like autoimmune conditions and things like that too. So it's a fascinating area.
Yeah. What would you say if you would like to improve? So probiotics is the bacteria and prebiotics is the food kind of that the bacteria eats, right?
Yeah, so the probiotics are the actual bacteria, and the prebiotics are kind of like the fertilizer, or they're the food for the bacteria. So if you want to increase or change your bacterial concentrations, prebiotics are really important, and generally that comes from high fiber foods. So a lot of fibrous foods are prebiotic foods.
Right. Okay.
And that's where the plants and vegetables and things like that are really important.
Exactly, but the actual bacteria you get from things like, is it called sauerkraut in English?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So these different kinds of fermented foods, right? That's because they're alive, right?
Yeah. So those fermented foods provide the probiotics, and all the fibrous foods and the prebiotics then help feed the bacteria.
Right. So if you're going to your grocery store and you're interested in getting some probiotics, what would you suggest? Like, which ones are the easiest one to buy that you think also can improve your gut flora?
It's again a very difficult one. Generally, I think if you're going to use probiotics as a supplement form, then generally they need, most of them are refrigerated, although there's more and more that don't require refrigeration these days. And again, it needs to be, again, from a very reputable company, because it's very important, because if probiotics need to be refrigerated and they haven't been, that's going to, a lot of them are going to die, I suppose. So I would really choose a company that's a reputable one, and go from there, and maybe one with multiple strains in there.
You were also talking about curcumin before, and I know that you done a randomized controlled study, which is kind of the gold standard, and you're also done a review about the mechanisms about curcumin. What is it that drove your interest in curcumin?
I originally became interested because there was because of the connection between inflammation and depression. So there was more and more research showing that depression was associated with increased inflammation. And so I've completed several studies looking at curcumin for depression, and we had really positive results. So curcumin seems to have a really positive effect on mood, and that's possibly via its anti-inflammatory effects. And curcumin also affects the gut, so affects the bacteria in the gut. So maybe by improving kind of levels of gut bacteria and changing kind of things there, then that might also help improve mood. And then from there, I really looked at other natural anti-inflammatories, like things like, I was quite interested in saffron, because there was already a good body of research for saffron, and I wanted to look at that one there too. So I'd say a lot of herbs, spices, and so forth probably work through improving mood via its anti-inflammatory effects.
Is that when the curcumin seem to work? Like, so if you have people who have inflammation and you give them curcumin, is that when you get the best results from curcumin on depression?
I think so. What we'd really like to do, what I think would be really important to do, is to look at measuring people's level of inflammation before treatment and see whether those people with higher levels of inflammation, whether they do better on curcumin.
Right.
I think that would be the case, but we haven't done that. And that's really, again, personalising the treatment. So if you can then go, okay, you've got excess levels of inflammation, let's target that inflammation through some type of anti-inflammatory herb, then we can target that. Again, you can look, if you could do more personalised and go, look, let's look at your gut bacteria, and you've got problems with the diversity of your gut bacteria.
Right.
Let's then look at maybe probiotics might be particularly beneficial for you, or prebiotics might be particularly beneficial for you. We haven't got to that point yet, but I think that's probably how it probably works.
Right. When you did your review, was inflammation the thing that the research believes is the main contributor, or is that just one of many?
Yeah, that's one of many. So in my review, which I wrote, one review I wrote several years ago, and I talked about how maybe curcumin works for its anti-inflammatory effects, but also we know that people with depression have excess levels of free radical damage or oxidative stress, and curcumin's a very nice antioxidant too. Possibly there's also research showing that curcumin can lower levels of stress hormones like cortisol, so maybe it works via that mechanism. So there's a whole bunch of different potential ways that it works, and because those mechanisms are so interrelated, it probably works on all of those areas.
Yeah, biology is really complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Curcumin also, when you take curcumin, are you supposed to take it when you're, because I think I've heard that you're supposed to take it with good fats or on an empty stomach. Is that correct, or?
I think the problem with curcumin is that it's not absorbed very well in the body. So there's different ways of trying to increasing the bioavailability of curcumin. And one way is some people talk about having it with kind of a black pepper extract with it. That helps increase the bioavailability in certain fats. But these days also there's lots of patented forms of curcumin out there that where the manufacturers have designed the curcumin so it is more bioavailable. So one way to potentially look at whether you should try a particular form of curcumin is asking about whether or trying to work out whether there's any research around this bioavailability. For example, the one that I use, BCM95, that is combined with turmeric oils, and that increases bioavailability through that way. There's other ones that are bonded with other ingredients to help increase this bioavailability.
If you would try to, like, on Google, find a curcumin which is more likely to be good, what all other things do you think is important to check if they have? So you just mentioned some kind of oil.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think I would just really, again, what I said earlier, I think I would really go, what's the curcumin that's in this product?
Yeah.
And then going, okay, has this curcumin been used? What am I using it for? If I'm using it for arthritis, has this curcumin, type of curcumin, been used for arthritis? Has this type of curcumin been used for depression? And choosing the extract that has been clinically studied, that's where I would probably go for first. If you can't find any of that, then again, I think that even curcumin that's not absorbed by the body still has a positive effect on gut health. Yeah. So even just general curcumin would probably have a beneficial effect.
Curcumin in general, how much should you take if you're taking a curcumin supplement?
If you're taking it for mood, then it's probably about 500 milligrams twice a day.
Yeah.
Now, often what people are doing in Australia, I don't know whether it's happening over there, but
in Sweden,
we're having a lot of turmeric lattes.
Have you? Yeah, okay.
Turmeric lattes.
No, haven't come here yet. Maybe next year.
Okay, so they're having a lot of people are having a lot of lattes with turmeric powder in there.
Okay.
But that's not enough. The turmeric is not enough. So the curcumin that's got that. So I'm saying you need about 500 milligrams of curcumin twice a day. That's probably equivalent to about, I haven't worked it out, but somewhere between 5 and 10 tablespoons of turmeric.
Right. Yeah. That's
okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think many people could tolerate that.
So it's better to take the supplements then.
Yeah, I think if you take for general health, everybody should be cooking with turmeric and spices, and just for general health, I think that's really, really important. Yep. If you're going to treat a condition, then maybe look at supplementing.
Right, and you said that you're supposed to take it twice a day if you're taking it for a mood disorder or diagnosis. When?
Yeah, I mean, just morning. Have it with breakfast. Have it in the morning and have it in the evening. That's when I would recommend that. There are different extracts now that are a bit more slower absorbing, so you might be able to get away with once a day. But I would just go have it with breakfast, have it with dinner, and do it that way. Same with saffron's the same thing. Have it with breakfast, have it with dinner.
Okay. So with breakfast and with dinner. So to the last questions then. During the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, habit have had the greatest positive impact on your life?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think for me, it's trying to get that balance between work and family. Getting that balance, I think, is really important. So I have the tendency to probably spend a bit too much time at work. So I've really tried to work on that and spend far more time with family and doing things away from work. I think that's really been important for me.
Right. And I'm also interested to hear what bad recommendations, or if there's any fad you hear related to health, mental health, well-being, or in your area.
Mm-hmm. Whenever somebody tells you that there's a magic pill, that this thing's going to fix your depression and rid your mood problems, your mental health problems forever, then I would steer away from that.
Yeah.
There is no magic pill. There is no magic solution. So we as humans are extremely complex, and as a result of that, we need to treatments usually need to be multi-pronged, or we need to target multi-targeted. So.
Right, and the last question then: if you were a leader of a country, what would be one thing that you would like to change, just in a hypothetical way?
Oh, I think I would try to get rid of as much junk food as I could, and try to get people to eat more wholesome foods, and I think that would have a dramatic effect on our health.
Okay, great. I would really like to genuinely say a big thank you for taking part and taking the time. Even though we had some technical problems, I really had a very good conversation with you. So a big thank you for taking part.
No, thank you for having me. It sounds like you're doing some great work there and educating the community about ways to kind of improve their well-being. So keep up the good work. You've done a tremendous job.
There is this one thing that I really hope for, one thing that I really dream of, and that is a subscription and a positive rating and a review from you on your podcast player. Hope you have a great day, friends. Take care. Bye. This podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, including the giving of medical advice. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.